Your first step to future scenarios starts with one workshop. Picture this: you've gathered a team, and by the end of the workshop, you've discussed the driving forces that might shape the future of your organization. In today's video, we're diving into the first step of creating powerful future scenarios: facilitating a driving forces workshop. I'm answering the following questions. How do I evaluate which driving forces are the most relevant to my organization? How do I prepare for a driving forces workshop to ensure it's effective? The purpose of the driving forces workshop is to identify the main forces shaping the future of a community, business, or organization. By doing so, we can collectively understand the key factors driving change, which helps us anticipate challenges and opportunities ahead. This is important because understanding driving forces allows stakeholders to make informed decisions and develop strategies that are resilient to future changes. By identifying these forces, we lay the groundwork for scenario development, helping us explore multiple potential futures. This workshop promotes a shared understanding among participants, ensuring that all voices are heard and that decisions are made based on collective insights rather than assumptions. Ultimately, the workshop is the starting point for teams to proactively shape their future, rather than simply reacting to changes as they occur. Today, I'll walk you through each step to make sure your workshop flows smoothly, engages participants, and most importantly, helps you get meaningful insights about the forces that could shape the future. To kick things off, let's start with introductions. Take a few moments to introduce yourself as the facilitator, or if you're co-facilitating, introduce your fellow team members. Share a bit about your background, and even more importantly, explain why understanding driving forces is essential. This builds trust and helps participants connect with the purpose of the session. If they know you're passionate about exploring the future, they're more likely to dive in with you. But be careful, as a facilitator, you should not be in the limelight, so don't overdo the introductions. Once the introductions are done, clearly define the aim of the workshop. This sets expectations and keeps everyone focused on the why. Break it down into two goals. First, the main objective is to identify the forces driving the future of your organization. The participants will explore what could shape it, challenge it, or transform it in the years to come. And the second, more subtle objective is to build a shared understanding among the participants of what change factors and driving forces really mean in their context. With the purpose laid out, your participants now have a clear understanding of the workshop's flow and their role in it. So let's get into the first interactive exercise, a warm-up exercise called First Job. This is a great way to break the ice and get everyone connecting with each other. For materials, you'll need one Sharpie marker per person and sticky notes. Here's how it works. Each participant will write down 3 simple pieces of information on a post-it note. First, their name. Second, their first job. And third, one thing they learned from that first job experience. Make sure you demonstrate this. For example, my name is Jan. My first job was as a newspaper delivery boy when I was about 13 or 14. And the biggest thing I learned was the importance of dedication to the job. Every Thursday, rain or shine, I had to deliver these newspapers. This warm-up is quick and simple, helping everyone share a bit about themselves. It also reduces the gap between experienced and less experienced participants by focusing on everyone's first job. Give participants about 4 minutes to jot down their info. This keeps it short and sweet. Once everyone's ready, each person will present only what's on their post-it note, so we keep things moving and avoid anyone talking too long. This keeps the energy up and makes it easier for participants to feel comfortable with each other. This warm-up sets the tone for a collaborative, insightful session. The next section is all about generating a wide range of ideas, building consensus, and ultimately identifying the driving forces that will shape the future of the organization. Let's start by framing the activity. What are the driving forces that will influence the organization in the future? This exercise helps us brainstorm those factors and then filter them down to the most relevant ones. I suggest that you use the working alone together concept to avoid lengthy discussions. Working alone together is a facilitation concept where participants work independently on their task or ideas, but in the same space, often with shared materials like a wall or a whiteboard. This approach allows individuals to focus on their own thoughts while still being part of the group dynamic. fostering both individual reflection and collective engagement. It strikes a balance between personal space and group collaboration, promoting active participation without direct group discussion. This also means that people that don't usually talk much get their points across. For materials, you'll need one Sharpie marker pen per person, sticky notes, and a wall whiteboard or flip chart to stick these sticky notes on. Each participant writes down as many driving forces as they can think of in 5 minutes. One idea per sticky note in legible handwriting. The target is for each person to have at least 10 ideas. Remember, the key is quantity here, so don't get participants to overthink. After the brainstorming, each participant picks their 10 best ideas, the ones they think are most impactful for the organization. Then everyone gets up and sticks their driving forces on the wall or flip chart, making sure they're visible to all. Ask participants to cluster similar topics together if possible. You will then need to group the change factors into clusters based on common themes. Now is the time for everyone to browse the ideas on the wall. If anything new comes to mind, add it to the board. Now that the participants have generated a lot of ideas, you might notice that some of them feel more like outcomes or consequences rather than the driving forces we're looking for. So the next step is all about distinguishing between these two. Outcomes are the results or consequences of something that's happened, while driving forces are the underlying drivers that will shape the future. Understanding this difference helps us refine our focus. Using a large sheet of paper or whiteboard, ask participants to create their causal maps. They'll place the cards from the previous brainstorming activity on the paper and connect them with arrows, showing the cause and effect relationships between them. Once the maps are complete, guide participants in reviewing their maps. Are they linking the true driving forces, those factors that are shaping the future? Or are they mixing in mere outcomes? Encourage them to refine the map, ensuring that the driving forces are clearly distinguished from their outcomes. This exercise helps participants draw clearer distinctions between outcomes and driving forces, ultimately refining the focus of their scenario building. To identify the most significant driving forces for the long-term future of your organization, you can use a simple straw poll. You'll be narrowing down the driving forces to just a handful, so let's dive into how it works. Here's what you'll need for the straw poll. Sharpie markers for each participant, sticky notes, 5 voting dots per participant. To start, each participant takes some time to reflect and select their 5 most important driving forces. These should be the factors they believe will most impact the future, specifically over the next 15 years or more. On a separate sticky note, each participant writes their reason for choosing that driving force. This step gives everyone a chance to think critically about their choices and to ensure they can articulate why these factors matter. Once everyone has written their reasons, it's time for the argumentation phase. One by one, each participant places their sticky notes next to the driving force they've chosen. They'll then explain why they've selected that driver, but only using what's written on their sticky notes. This step is crucial because it allows everyone to hear different perspectives and understand the reasoning behind each selection. Now it's time for voting. After hearing everyone's arguments, each participant gets 5 voting dots to place on their preferred change drivers. The catch here? The dots must be placed on 5 different factors, ideally spanning across different categories, whether political, economic, social, technological, legal, or environmental. This helps ensure that the group's priorities are spread across different domains and gives a more balanced view of the key forces driving change. And that's how the straw poll helps to narrow down the driving forces that are most critical to the long-term future of the organization. By reflecting, sharing reasoning, and voting, you'll quickly identify the driving forces that the group agrees are the most significant to focus on. Now that you've narrowed down the driving forces, you need to identify which ones have the highest impact and uncertainty. This step is crucial for developing the scenarios. So let's dive into how we'll approach this. Start by collecting all the sticky notes from the previous exercise, so you have all your identified driving forces in one place. Next, create an impact uncertainty matrix on the whiteboard or wall. This matrix will help you categorize each driving force by its level of impact and uncertainty. Have each participant assess how uncertain and impactful each driving force outcome is. For example, let's consider climate change. How well do we understand its potential outcomes? Using a ranking system like a 1 to 10 scale or low, medium, high to rate each force. Highlight the 2 driving forces that score the highest for both uncertainty and impact. These are your critical uncertainties. The factors whose future manifestation is uncertain, but are likely to have the greatest impact on the future. Make sure that the 2 selected drivers are independent of each other. This is a crucial point. When selecting the 2 driving forces with the highest impact on uncertainty, it's important that they are independent, meaning they don't rely on each other or influence each other directly. If the 2 drivers are interdependent, you're essentially exploring the same issue from 2 different angles, which could limit the diversity and depth of your scenarios. For example, if one driver is technological advancements in AI and the other is automation in the workforce, these 2 drivers are closely related and could overlap, leading to less variety in your scenarios. Instead, aim to choose drivers from different domains like climate change, environmental, and global political instability, political, which have distinct areas of influence and will provide more contrast in the scenarios you create. This independence ensures that each scenario explores a unique and plausible future. Any factors that are very certain, like things we already know and understand well, will be included in all your scenarios, as they are less likely to lead to different future paths. This process will help you focus on the elements that matter most. Now that we've identified our critical uncertainties, it's time to start structuring our scenarios. This step will help you build the foundation of your future scenarios by defining the key axes that shape them. You're going to explore the 2 driving forces with the highest impact on uncertainty. These will become the core of your scenario framework. For each of the 2 selected drivers, think of 2 opposite outcomes. These should represent the extremes, what could happen in the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario. For instance, if one of your drivers is political stability, one outcome might be high stability, and the opposite could be political chaos. Take these 2 opposite outcomes and place them on the extreme ends of a 2x2 matrix that you've drawn on the whiteboard or flip chart. The matrix should have one driver along the x-axis and the other along the y-axis. This will allow you to visualize how these forces might evolve in different directions and create a grid of 4 unique scenarios. By creating this logical framework, you're setting the stage for building robust and insightful scenarios that can inform future planning and decision-making. As we wrap up the workshop, it's important to make sure everyone knows what's coming next and how they'll be involved moving forward. This section is all about providing participants with clear information on the next steps in the scenario development process and outlining how they can continue contributing. During this time, I'll briefly explain what will happen after the session, whether it's further analysis, follow-up activities, or next workshops. You've now identified the critical uncertainties that are likely to affect the future of your organization. But to really take your strategic thinking to the next level and to create actionable outcomes, you will need to develop scenarios based on these critical uncertainties. So watch this step-by-step guide on how to develop scenarios. But before you jump into that, a quick word of caution. If you're not clear on the critical uncertainties and driving forces that matter most, creating scenarios won't be nearly as effective. So make sure you've nailed down your driving forces from this video before moving forward.